Good afternoon. This is Jason Dean from Film Fanatic. Hello to all the YouTubers out there. And yeah, I knew something would happen like this, and it's pretty funny. But I knew I would get sidetracked or screw up the order of these films and the subsequent videos that I'm doing on them. And I did. I realized a little bit ago I did not do a video on my favorite film of the franchise. So here we go. So yeah, hope everyone's doing good. It's about 1 o'clock, 10 after 1 on this beautiful Saturday. It's very fall-like, pretty chilly already. I'm not really digging the cold weather so soon. It got really cold last night. I went to see. I had a couple of good friends that were playing down at my friends Vince Gabriel, and Glenn Dubois, really good buddies of mine, kind of music comrades and people, mentors of mine. And they were playing at Lulu's last night down in Rockland. And Lulu's is, like I've mentioned a bunch of times in the videos, previous videos, it's like, my favorite venue. We've played a lot of gigs there this summer with both bands, the Quantum Project band and also the jazz group that I also play in with Glenn and Mike Whitehead and Mitch Markowitz, the Whitehead Dean group. And so both of those bands have been playing a lot at Lulu's, and that's been great. They've all been outside gigs, and luckily the weather's been good. And we have Saturday next week. We'll be back there with the jazz group, and then we have another Quantum gig coming up after that. And I think that might be the end of the season as far as us playing outside there, because unfortunately it's only outside, so we can only do it, this time of year. But I went down last night. Those guys, Vince and Glenn, were playing down at Lulu's last night, and around 7 o'clock or so, 7:30. They started around 5, and I was there for a couple hours. Around 7:30, it started getting really chilly out there, and I couldn't really hang out anymore. It was strange to think that like a week ago, literally it was like 85 degrees. Um, it's it's strange. I can never get used to it. So yeah. So like I said in the start of this video, I couldn't believe I was like, "You kidding me? I didn't do a video on my favorite film of the franchise." I did a post on Facebook um, that I usually do, and I'm obviously keeping them in order. In the videos, I've been trying to do all the videos in order, and but I knew it would probably happen because there's so many movies. There's like 13 movies altogether, so uh, it did happen, and I realized I didn't do a video for my favorite movie, which was Friday 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. Duh. But here we go. This is, like I've said in other videos for this series, is I've seen this one definitely more than any other movie. Even probably more so than the original, which I love. Um, and either of those I can't count how many times I've seen them. They've just they just yeah, just movies that I literally watch those two movies like, every couple of months, or every at least once a year. Since I bought this box set, I've like watched those like consecutive times. So yeah, this one for me is the best. Um, for me, it's like the most well-known actor who played Jason Voorhees is Kane Hodder, and he's played Jason, I think, more than any other actors. He has played Jason for about, I believe it's been about 4 movies. Um, there there isn't any other actor that I know of in the whole franchise that's played Jason for more than one show or one more than one movie. For Kane Hodder was especially popular. He really towards, and he kind of came in like the middle of the whole franchise, but for a lot of reasons, his popularity became really huge, and he kind of rebooted the interest in a lot of ways of the franchise. I've always really liked Kane Hodder, but I've always felt a little bit that it's, I don't know. I don't want to knock him because I think he's great, but I just feel like it's a little bit he's a little bit overly hyped to some degree for some reason. I just feel like he didn't really quite have that ability that people say that he had. And he was also one of the guys who was like super proactive with like kind of demanding the filmmakers to really keep him on as Jason. He was really outgoing with that, and he really like pushed his way into the films to continue the role. And without being sounding negative, he was great. He's definitely a huge part of the franchise, and I think he's really good. But for me and for my money, Ted White is the ultimate Jason Voorhees. He was in the final chapter, and Ted White was just, I think, the most menacing actor to play Jason Voorhees. He put Jason Voorhees in the most menacing framework, and just incredibly intense, and he's unrelenting and just totally brutal. And Ted White had a really huge background as a stuntman, so he was like one of the first guys that really amped up the whole like physicality of Jason Voorhees because of his background as a stuntman. So he really has that, you know, insane intensity every time he's on the screen. And the other thing that's cool is they don't really show him all that much compared to a lot of the other films where you see Jason Voorhees quite a bit and you see him in the act of killing people and doing what he does. But there's a lot of cool things about this movie where he was. They don't really show him all that much. I mean, the last half of the last act of the movie, the last half hour, 40 minutes, you see him quite a bit. But all before that, there's a lot of quick cuts and you don't really see him. And I feel like it definitely builds a level of intensity almost around it, like kind of what you don't see is more intense, but you feel his presence. And when you finally see him on the screen, it's like really, it really delivers. And the other thing that's really great about this one that I love is I'm a huge Tom Savini fan. He's probably the most well-known, or easily one of the most well-known effects guys in horror cinema history. He got his start with Friday the 13th movie, the original, and he was brought back to do Chapter 4. And his effects are just, above and beyond, I think, anyone else's. His in camera or on camera trickery is pretty astounding. And again, this is 30 years or plus, 30 years plus before CGI and all of the computer generated graphics that we kind of live in now. So everything was done in camera, and the kills are just brutal, and it really gives you. Every time I feel like I see a movie with his work in it, with Tom Savini's work, I'm always like, wow, how did they do that? How did they pull that off? Because it's always super impressive. And when you think that they were doing everything, in camera with like one or two takes, because, the shots were elaborate, and when things went wrong, it cost them money, and they already didn't have very much money to begin with, but then they have to reset everything and clean everything up, which takes hours and hours and hours. So they were really trying to perfect the craft, so when it came for the time when the camera was rolling, it would deliver the goods. And can't beat him. And then the other one he's really well known for, the other film that Tom Savini's really well known for is William Lustig's Maniac. And that's an amazing slasher film, one of the greatest grindhouse slasher films ever. And it's brutal as all hell. And Tom Savini's actually in the film. He's gone on to make, after Friday the 13th, he became basically like a rock star in that world, and he did countless countless numbers of movies after that. There was a movie I did way back when, another great grindhouse exploitation movie called Midnight, which is really great, and he did the effects in that movie also. And there's a bunch of others that he's done, but he's just amazing. He's definitely my favorite. And so that was one of the things that I always loved about part four, the final chapter, was him coming back to the series and really kind of giving it that, that extra uh, touch of magic, with all of his gritty in-camera effects. All the other effects artists, like, and they've, throughout the series, there's been virtually every other film. There's always been a different effects group on each show, but there's something about Tom Savini that's just pure magic, and you always like wonder like, wow, how did they pull that stuff off, considering the limitations they had back then. And and the other thing too, the cast for this movie, it came out in 1984. It's pure 80s cheese, and but the cast is so amazing. It's got Kimberly Beck, Corey Feldman, the one and only, and the iconic Crispin Glover. And it's it's got some of there's a sequence in it in particular with Crispin Glover where he is like kind of dancing with this girl, this other teenager, and it's one of the most hilarious scenes I think ever on the big screen. It's just and it's total '80s cheese and the music, and he's outrageous in it. And Corey Feldman's great in it. He did this, when Corey Feldman did this, he was like, I believe he was like 13 or 14, and it was right kind of when he was a child star, and he was while he was filming this movie, or shortly after this movie wrapped, he went on to become a huge star, and he went to star in the Goonies, and then he was brought back on another Friday 13th movie for like a brief period. But this was like the height, pretty much at the height of his power as a child actor. And it was also directed by Joseph Zito, who I really like a lot. He really uh, amplified, I feel like, a lot of the aspects of the story to make it a little bit more gritty and real. And there's a fight scene between Kimberly Beck, who's like the lead actress in the movie, and she like basically fights Jason one on one, and it's really gritty, it's really intense, and she like kind of holds her own. And I like to with the whole dynamic of the cast where they make the kids more like normal kids. They're not like you know too Hollywood. They seem like just everyday kids, like how we were as teenagers. So it has a little bit more of a realistic thing, and the kills are just great. I just love the atmosphere. Every movie's got the whole kind of the tropes of, you know, lots of boobs and naked teenagers having sex, and then where they get slaughtered. And there's always a sequence of where there's a lot of rain and it's like dark, and the lights, the power is always cut off, so everybody's in the dark. This has all those sequences, but I just feel like the aesthetic around all those aspects is dialed up even more, and it's just amazing. And this movie, I believe too, was at that time was like the biggest of the franchise. And I remember seeing this movie on VHS when I was a kid. I loved the first one. Saw that on VHS or probably on cable. I remember the first Friday the 13th was on cable quite a bit. That was a really popular movie. That's a great, I think it's a classic. I feel like it's a real standalone movie. Um, it almost has more of a Alfred Hitchcock vibe. So, and then the second one is great, and then the third one, the 3D one, is very cool. But there's some about the magic of the final chapter that was something I remember seeing on VHS and just and gobbling that up all the time. And the transfer of that movie, well, they all look great, but all the transfers are pretty fabulous on Blu-ray. But the transfer in particular for the final chapter on Blu-ray is pretty fabulous. I really really enjoy it a lot, and it's a movie I never get sick of. I can watch it, I can watch it continuous. It's got one of the best death scenes, or best, I think, endings for what you think is the death of Jason ever in history, and it's classic Tom Savini. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you have not seen any of these movies, God forbid, you got to see this one at least. You got to see them all in order. I think out of context they don't make sense so much. The first one is obviously, I think, its own thing, but all the rest of the movies, they are. But you could. I mean, they're all kind of dumb in some ways, so they're like kind of easy to follow. But it helps to know a little bit of the mythology around the story, and what Camp Crystal Lake is, and Jason's mom, and where she came. Because essentially, it's like the whole story is centered around revenge. Revenge that completely gets out of control, but it's a revenge, and it's kind of the story about this kid who's like, the quintessential underdog, Jason Voorhees. So, yeah, just an amazing movie. So, other things that I wanted to get to, just two quick things. On October 1st, we're going to be having our quantum show at my friends Daniel and Jillian's house. It's going to be October 1st. It's going to be on a Saturday. And my really good friend Halsey, who's an amazing musician, he's going to be playing at it. He's going to be making his debut with his solo electronic group called Halsey. So I've been promoting that, and it's going to be something that I'm really looking forward to. It's going to be starting around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on a Saturday. It's going to be in Camden. So I'm going to be hitting that pretty hard as far as promoting that, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And we have another quantum show coming up at Lulu's in a couple weeks. And working on trying to get some other things. There might be some other things coming up. And the other event that I'm possibly going to be planning is, I'm trying to plan something special for the end of this whole horror odyssey that I'm doing right now, with covering all of the movies of this awesome franchise. So I might be doing like some kind of event at the end of it. And I think the last movie I might hold off and actually watch if I do an event. I was thinking of one idea I'm thinking of doing is having a party where it's centered on this movie, but then also recording some of the party for the YouTube channel. And it will be like a send off, or a kickoff, or a send off to this whole big thing. And I felt like doing something special. So I'm thinking about possibly showing and watching Freddy vs. Jason, which I think is an amazing movie. That might be a cool way to top off this whole thing when I'm done with all the rest of the reviews and watching the rest of the movies. And I'm thinking of doing like a house party where we have, some food and drink, and we watch that movie. And I'm going to record some of the video, some of the party, like particularly around the movie. I'm going to record it for my YouTube channel, making it like kind of an event out of it. Don't have a whole lot of space, but I think I can probably get a good group of people for something like that. And I'm working on a couple other things that I might do around it. So yeah, stay tuned for some new ideas coming your way around an event to kind of send this whole thing off when it comes to a conclusion, because I've been having a blast revisiting all of these movies. So thank you again. This is Jason Dean from Film Fanatic, YouTube. Get a chance, like and subscribe my page. That would be great. Thank you. We'll see you next time.